For Lauren Phelps, life had really just begun when she married the love of her life, Matthew Phelps, in 2016. The two were deeply involved in their local Baptist church, with Lauren being a Sunday school teacher and Matthew being a church minister. But in the fall of 2017, their lives would forever be changed. In the middle of the night, a crime of unspeakable proportions took place in the Phelps household, a crime that Lauren, unfortunately, wouldn't survive. Lauren was involved with a company known as Sensi. Sensi is a service pretty similar to Avon and countless other programs where you can sign up through their website to sell products in exchange for a small commission. Lauren teamed up with Sensi sometime in 2015 or 2016, and it seems as though she was doing quite well. The work that Lauren was able to do with Sensi allowed her to maintain a stay-at-home lifestyle while her boyfriend and soon-to-be husband was attending schooling and training to become a pastor at the couple's Baptist church. It appears as though Lauren met Matthew sometime in mid-2014. The first mention of Matthew on Lauren's social media was in the fall of that year, and the two seemed to have hit it off immediately, officially becoming a couple in November of 2014. According to social media, the two were beyond happy together. In fact, their lives seemed to be perfect. But you always have to remember, social media is only a slight glimpse into the lives people are actually living. As it would turn out, no sooner than their marriage had begun, it had begun to fall apart. According to Lauren's family, despite how happy Lauren may have seemed, she was miserable, and most of this misery stemmed from her new husband. And this is where things began to cause trouble for the Phelps household. After living together for a few short months, Lauren began to realize that Matthew had a serious problem with money. This naturally caused serious problems in the couple's relationship, and Lauren was at wit's end no sooner than their marriage had begun. Lauren was known for being resourceful, honest, and careful about how she lived her life. Matthew, on the other hand, was a bit more rambunctious and careless. Lauren had spoken with him time and time again about the sheer amount of money he was spending. Matthew was unhappy with his life. On the surface, he had everything: a beautiful wife, a fulfilling job, a nice car, everything most people would ever aspire to have. But that just wasn't enough for him. Lauren grew so concerned about Matthew's spending habits that she began limiting the access that he had to their bank accounts, but even this didn't seem to work, as he'd always find a way around Lauren's safeguards. This led to one argument after another, and before they knew it, both Lauren and Matthew were at wit's end with one another. In mid-2017, Lauren had been speaking with a few of her friends about Matthew, and she began to fear that their relationship wasn't going to work out. To top this off, Lauren had begun to suspect that Matthew wasn't being faithful, but she couldn't prove anything just yet. Lauren did her best to see past Matthew's flaws, but they were becoming too large to ignore, and it was causing their lives to spiral out of control. While Lauren was obsessed with things like her cute outfits, Star Wars, dogs, and children, Matthew's priorities were elsewhere. Matthew had a dark side. Contrary to Lauren's more lighthearted interests and hobbies, Matthew seems to have had an affinity for horror movies and the macabre, particularly the movie American Psycho. According to friends of Matthew, he was truly obsessed with the film to a concerning degree. He'd even dress up as some of the characters from the film on holidays from time to time. But things got much darker and much more concerning. It was September 1, 2017. The Phelps couple were asleep in their apartment, and it was, by all means, a night like any other. The two turned in for the evening and went to bed as they always did, but at some point in the middle of the night, Matthew was haunted by twisted dreams that he couldn't seem to shake off. Matthew had actually revealed that he struggled to sleep most nights. This led him to go to various means to try to get some rest, oftentimes relying on over-the-counter medications to help get to sleep, though there are rumors that he may have been involved in much harder substances as well. On this particular night, Matthew had taken a high dose of cough medicine, as he had heard from a friend that it was the easiest way to turn in for the night. But one of the side effects of this medicine is that it could cause some rather wild dreams, and Matthew was experiencing this firsthand. He never revealed specifically what these crazy dreams were about, but they were so disturbing that he eventually got out of bed to clear his mind for a bit, trying to calm down. As he crept out of bed, he stumbled over to the bedroom doorway and turned on the light. But when he turned to face the room, he couldn't believe his eyes. At first, he thought he was still dreaming. But he quickly realized, this was no dream. This was real life. When he turned around, Matthew found Lauren lying on the floor, the entire bedroom covered in red stains. On the bed he noticed a knife, and when he looked down at his clothing, he noticed he was covered in red from head to toe. Unsure of what to do, Matthew did the only sensible thing and called the police. After dialing 911, Matthew made a truly disturbing revelation to the dispatcher. As he spoke with the 911 operator, he explained that he had a terrible dream, but when he turned on the lights, he found his wife on the floor. The dispatcher began desperately asking how something like this could have happened, but all Matthew could do was describe the scene of the crime. As investigators later made their way to the scene of the crime to collect whatever evidence they could, they realized a particular aspect of the scene that didn't make any sense. When they arrived to speak with Matthew, they realized that he was strangely clean. Even though he had told the dispatcher that he was covered in red stains, they found that he was in pretty good shape for someone who had just woken up to a crime scene. It didn't take detectives long at all to prove that Matthew had, in fact, cleaned up long before he ever called 911. All throughout his interrogation and interviews with police, Matthew maintained his story. Police didn't have any evidence to prove otherwise, outside of the strange fact that he'd cleaned up before calling 911, but this isn't a crime by any means, it's just weird. But while Matthew had initially maintained his innocence during the investigation, he would soon make a bizarre confession that took everyone by surprise. At this point, investigators were unsure of what to believe. The evidence told a clear story of what had taken place that evening, but the account that Matthew had given made an equal amount of sense. Matthew claimed he was under the influence of cough syrup when the crime occurred, and this appeared to have been true. But the manufacturer of the cough syrup in question explained that, in their countless years of research, they found zero evidence that could link the medication to violence. Police were highly suspicious, but they weren't able to prove much of anything, at least not yet. Matthew underwent a major shift and actually admitted to the crime. As the case was still undergoing investigation and the trial was underway, detectives managed to track down multiple social media accounts that Matthew owned. On his Marty Radical page, Matthew almost exclusively posted screenshots and quotes from the film, American Psycho. Police have made a few bold suggestions, claiming that Matthew was so fascinated with American Psycho, and so frustrated with his wife for trying to control their finances and threatening to divorce him that he snapped. In a fit of rage, they claim he enacted one of his favorite scenes from American Psycho, inflicting more than 120 individual wounds on his wife, then taking the time to clean himself up before ever calling the police. In the aftermath of the crime, Lauren's family has spoken out about the case, and Lauren's father has expressed regret over the last few weeks of Lauren's life. He mentioned that, just a few weeks before his daughter lost her life, he noticed that her demeanor had changed. He regrets that he didn't question her further about this, and he believes that this may allude to Matthew's crime having been premeditated, and Lauren may have felt that something bad was about to happen. To make matters even worse, Lauren also learned that Matthew had been cheating on her. Lauren's sister says that she spoke with Lauren just hours before the crime unfolded, and she discovered that Lauren and Matthew had been arguing about Matthew's alleged affair, after she'd witnessed her husband sneaking out of the house to be with another woman. We may never know for sure, but Lauren's family has been beyond heartbroken by the entire situation. Lauren's mother describes Matthew as a master manipulator, also believing the crime was premeditated for months before it took place, though, in all honesty, I've found no reason to believe that this is true. In the end, Matthew was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. He's nothing but a wolf in a sheep's den, and Matthew got exactly what he